Hello and welcome to the press conference of the Piazza Grande film The Old Oak by Ken Loach. It is a pleasure.
And Paul Lever.
And Paul Lever too. It is a pleasure to have both,
Say that, yeah.
both of them here with us today. I will start us off with a question and then I will open up to the floor. There are headphones for translations if you need them. So, yes, following I, Daniel Blake, and Sorry We Missed You, The Old Oak is the third film you've now made in the northeast of England. Do you regard these as a trilogy?
Well, we began with one film, which was a story about how the state denies the necessary funds for people who are vulnerable to have a decent existence and drives them to hunger. And that led on to another complementary story of the gig economy workers who would their fathers or they would have worked an 8-hour day and got a decent wage, and now they work 12 hours a day with poverty pay and maybe do a second job at night. So that, and the consequence on family life. And the area is very specific. It's an area where old industries have gone, like steel, shipbuilding, coal mining, all gone. And there's great deprivation. But there's still a memory of the solidarity people had when there was a coal mine, because you depend on the person working next to you, you know. And we thought we can't leave the area, we can't leave this region without telling that story of, on the one hand, the devastation, and on the other hand, the old tradition of solidarity that brings people together. And Paul had the idea that what will illustrate that more clearly is the story of the refugees from the Syrian war, who are put into those communities, and their presence clarifies the devastation, the fact they have nothing, communities have nothing, but also they have the memory of solidarity. So it was a film we felt to complete that little sequence, we felt we had to, the story we had to tell. Was that?
Is there any questions from the press? Right here in the front.
So first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Loach, for your beautiful film, like the previous. I like very much. Well, I will continue in Italian, so the boss could understand me. Ok, la mia domanda riguarda la scena finale del film, che vede quasi una rinascita delle trade union come le conoscevamo quando esisteva quel mondo che lei giustamente ha detto è ora totalmente scomparso. È convinto di questo o è solamente un suo augurio? Cioè questo finale, diciamo, ottimista, che vede la solidarietà fra un nuovo proletariato che è quello dei migranti, in una situazione come quella di oggi, con il primo ministro che la Gran Bretagna si ritrova di origine indiana ed è il più duro in Europa contro i migranti, con le sue navi prigioni, con le sue iniziative per fermare i migranti in Africa. Grazie per la risposta.
Thanks very much for your question. It's a very, very important one. And if you're writing a review, I hope you don't end with the ending. Don't spoil everything. It's an open question. But the second half of your question was very, very important, because we do see now with Rishi Sunak and also Suella Braverman and also Priti Patel beforehand, you know, they've come. You would think they'd have more sympathy, but they've been absolutely brutal. Particularly Suella Braverman has been absolutely racist and inflamed the situation. And but the bigger question really is, you talk about, is it wishful thinking or not? It's an open question. You know, what we see around Europe is, we see the hard right who are happy to use immigrants and asylum seekers as scapegoats. But on the other hand, you see massive solidarity. You see people of great sympathy and intelligence and empathy. And I think hope is something that is, you know, it's got multi-layers to it. It's the intelligence to try and understand it. It's the empathy to try and stand in someone else's shoes. It's the determination to come together and try and organise so you actually make big changes. And then and what inspired us, I suppose, is seeing those contradictions in these mining villages. When you went to these mining villages and you see how they were, as Ken mentioned earlier, destroyed, devastated. The defeat in 1984 with the trade union was very, very important. And you saw people who had lost agency in their own lives. And when you go to these villages, the library's gone, the swimming pool's gone, the churches are gone, you know, the shops are all gone. And like, you know, many of these villages, the thing that's hanging on is a few pubs, last public place standing. And so the people who have lived in these areas too, what they do is they put immigrants in there, and other local authorities in the rest of England dump problem families there, people who lost souls, people out of prison. So they feel they've got no agency in their life. And they say, why are you doing that to us and not to the rich areas? You know, and so the whole question becomes, in a way, what they do is they make it nice and convenient to blame immigrants. And so there's a massive battle going on just now between those people who want to be honest and try and have a rational response to what's going to happen with immigrants coming from war and climate change, and those who are determined to hide other problems and blame refugees. And you see that right through the whole of Europe. You see it in Hungary, you see it in Italy, I think you see it in every single country. You see it in countries that have had a history of fascism in Italy and Greece, and they're often left carrying the brunt of it. So there has to be a rational response by the rest of Europe to say, how are we going to deal with this problem rationally and then deal with it collectively? And so I don't think, you know, we are seeing this through any kind of spectrum of happy thinking. There's a massive debate and a massive fight to go on, and it's an open question what will happen.
Two quick things on that. Agreed, of course. First of all, there is a big fight back. We've had railway workers opposing the privatisation of the railways and getting a proper wage increase because their wages have gone right down, and defending the services. We've had health workers on strike, nurses, doctors. The doctors are still on strike. So there is an upsurge in militancy. And the question is always, where's the leadership? Because militancy is like steam from a kettle, isn't it? It'll dissipate unless you have a leadership that will keep to the demands and don't give in till you win. And the leadership doesn't always do that. So with the unions, it's always a struggle for leadership, always has been. The working class has the power, but the leaders will take them down a dead end. And the dead end is called social democracy. And the European so-called socialist parties, including the Labour Party in Britain, lead into a dead end. And that's the problem. They don't lead to fundamental change. But the other point I just wanted to pass on quickly, just to share, is that hope is a political necessity. Because if you hope that collectively you can make change, then you have the confidence to do it. If you're hopeless, then that's when the far right strikes. And that's when, and it's because, and the ruling class encourages hopelessness. This is the way the world is. There is no alternative, was Thatcher's saying. There is no alternative. Yes, by God, there's an alternative. But they want to tell you there's no alternative. Then you have no hope. Then you don't change anything. That's why they promote racism. Because if you blame the immigrants, you don't blame the people who are ripping you off. And if you blame the people who are ripping you off, you can say, my God, we can change this. And then you have hope. So hope is fundamental to making changes.
Thank you.
Veramente complimenti, sono emozionato ad essere qua con voi, perché il cinema che fa Ken Loach e che avete fatto è una cosa più unica che rara. Sapete parlare in maniera chiara, precisa di vita, politica, denuncia, quindi veramente tanti complimenti. In questo film ho notato che è un film molto molto amaro, lo spazio per la risata e per il ridere, che nel suo cinema c'è sempre stato, più o meno l'ironia c'è sempre stata, qua è praticamente sparita. Volevo sapere come mai questa scelta e anche questa, diciamo così, moda nella vita, ma anche nel cinema, del politicamente corretto per ogni cosa, per ogni narrazione. Grazie infinite.
Do you want to say about the comedy?
Yes, yeah, well, we're not very funny, are we, really? That's it. Yeah, well, I mean, I think every story has... You're kind of truthful to the premise and the characters. I mean, Angel's Share, or for example, or Looking for Eric, you know, there was a big comic element, you know, and... but with this one, there were some kind of funnier scenes. But what happened was, when you're dealing with a film like this, where there's two communities, and you know both communities are not homogeneous. You know, there's a big divide in the British community, the home community, and you can't lump every single Syrian into kind of one person. So there was lots of characters to deal with, and to try and do a story like that is actually. It's a tougher challenge, I think. You know, Daniel Blake, you just follow the one character the whole way through. Sorry I Miss You, it's one family, so there's a tightness and there's an energy to it. So to try and bring all these disparate characters together and have everything in it, you know, is a mighty challenge. And you've only got the 1 hour, 45 minutes, and some things fall away by the wayside. You just try to keep on story, but we still hope there's warmth and generosity there. You know, I mean, you see bitterness and anger from the host community, but hopefully you understand why Charlie is like that. You know, why that family is like that. The people have been dumped on. The houses are bought in their streets online on a Monday, sold on a Friday. People don't even visit those seats. They have no control, no agency about who lives next door. So hopefully you'll understand people's anger and fury there. But I hope, you know, with the other characters, there's some sense of generosity and warmth. At least that's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. I've forgotten the second part of the question.
Political correctness.
Political correctness. Well, the political correctness I don't know if you have the same phrase in other countries, but of course the political correctness they talk about, you know, that you have to be fair to people of whatever their gender, you have to be fair to people whatever their sexual orientation, and if you're too fair, then you're accused of being politically correct, and you can't make the same old jokes that men make about women or women make about men or whatever. Of course, that's not the true political correctness that they...
No, don't touch it, don't hurt him. No. Did you see that beautiful Spider-Man? That's the beginner of the script.
Okay. All right, it's a money spider.
By a spider. And, oh, right. There's a Spider-Man. I don't know if you've just seen that. It just descended there. Yeah, it comes. That's a right one. Look how beautiful that is. Yeah. This is a special moment. The spider's trying to tell you something.
Yeah, it is.
Respect for nature.
God,
no more discrimination against spiders. Yeah.
It's the true political correctness is... I'm trying to be serious here.
This is the secret of our relationship, really. Yeah.
There's no jokes in this film. The true political correctness is that the free market equals freedom. That's the political... You can't challenge that. You know, that's the political correctness they insist on. They insist on, you know, in our country, oh God, we've got to have a monarch. because it preserves our essential nature, our essential national characteristic. Absolute rubbish. Of course we don't need a monarch. But that's the political correctness in Britain. But it's mainly that, we are only free if we are free to exploit. Freedom is not freedom from hunger, because we encourage hunger for the working class, because it keeps them in their place. So freedom from hunger is not freedom. Freedom to exploit is the only freedom they recognize, and that's their political correctness. So that's the political correctness we have to challenge.
Faccio la domanda in italiano. Complimenti intanto per il film, e l'ho trovato un film sul dolore, ma soprattutto un film sulla perdita, sulla morte. È una sua riflessione, è una vostra riflessione arrivata a questo punto, guardando la società, guardando le persone, guardando i vecchi che stanno morendo da soli perché non hanno le medicine, guardando gli immigrati che muoiono perché non hanno da mangiare o perché non sanno nuotare. Cioè tutto questo dolore che il film esprime, e fino alla fine, fino a quel funerale che porta alle lacrime. Volevo sapere se è la fine della società, lei voleva descrivere la fine della società occidentale. Voleva descrivere, perché quando si dice civiltà si intende gente capace di accogliere gli altri, gente capace di far crescere i giovani e di dargli lavoro. Ecco, allora volevo capire se questo film è il film sulla fine di una società.
It's a really difficult question to answer that. I think all those elements are there, that society is fragmenting, and our fight back is very tenuous, you know. So those elements are there, and I mean something obviously that is beyond the film is the whole issue of the destruction of the climate and the environment and the diversity of nature, but I think there is a sense. Well, we hope there's a sense in the film that that society is very frail. You know, the old connections have broken, the old reliable. Well, over the three films as a whole, I hope there's a sense that the old relationships are broken down. I mean, we had a saying that was implicit in the settlement after the war, actually, the 1945 settlement, that we are our brother's keeper, we are our sister's keeper. We take care of ourselves. The settlement after the war in Britain, and I think in many other countries too, was that society looks after its citizens from the cradle to the grave. You know, we are secure with one another. You're in trouble, we help you. I'm in trouble, society will help me too. That's gone. Thatcher killed that. There is no such thing as society, she said. Only individuals. And that individualism has brought us, and personal greed has brought us to the situation we're in. And so that, yes, there is a sense of society fragmenting and finding a way through this. And I say that's compounded by, which is not in the film because it's too much to do all and put in one film, but what we know is that the earth is collapsing. It is actually collapsing. And the immediacy of all this we have a few years, really. And that sense of urgency, I think, and that sense of how do we do that's why, you know, just in a small way, we wanted to say, look, never mind what they say, we do have strength. And here it is, you know, here are the images of it. We do have strength. Yes, and it's the old banners and it's the old songs, but we do have strength. And in a way that we felt that was just as far as we could go, you know. But I think the drift of what you say, I think, is right.
Can I just add just one element to that too? I mean, I agree with all that. But there are many strands to a film. I mean, it's not just one line and there's lots of nuances. But, I mean, I feel it's really important to talk about the Syrians, you know, and this is very, very important. And we met, I don't know if you, at the end of the film, we say we can't thank everyone because they couldn't give their names because they've contacts back in Syria. But we just met remarkable people who shared their life stories with us. And as we know, Syria has suffered torture and murder on an industrial scale. And every single person we talked to, their personal story was absolutely tragic. There was actually one remarkable woman who's actually, you see her in the film. She lost her family, she lost her home, she lost her children, and she lost her legs. And now when you see people like that coming and starting a new life, you know, and being positive and making contact and writing poetry and going along to, you know, joining the community, people like that raise your spirits, you know, and that is actually hope in action. Absolutely brilliant people. I met many of them. Many of them now are, you know, rebuilding their lives now with their children and they're fighting for their future. And so you see great hope there and great creativity and great determination. And what has been lovely too is that many of the people who have made contact through the film are now meeting up. There's a women's group, you know, they were involved with the trade union movement and the old miners' strike. They are meeting up with the Syrians. There's going to be a festival next month that we are going to attend. The Syrian are organising the food for this festival in an area where the far right are organising. So you see the far right trying to demonise them, and you see the local community saying, we'll give you work and you are going to cook for the entire festival for that community. So what you see is, you know, hope in action, and we shouldn't forget that as well.
There's a question here in the front. D'accord, non, désolé.
Je peux parler en français, ça va? Je trouvais que, contrairement un petit peu à tout ce qui a été dit, avec quoi je suis quand même d'accord, que vous avez fait là une fable un peu moins cruelle et...
You don't have the translation.
Yes, I can.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, yes.
Ken, une fable un peu moins cruelle et cynique que d'habitude, et que même il y a un certain optimisme dans votre film qui se manifeste notamment à travers la relation de ces deux jeunes qui sont passionnés par la photographie. Est-ce que j'ai raison ou est-ce que j'ai tort? Le bien semble un peu l'emporter quand même.
Well, yes, in the end, yes. I mean, because again, please don't give away the end of the film. But the
No, why not?
yeah, but the people in the community do come and support a family when in their loss, you know, and it is just that that they recognise the loss and they identify with it. And it's a way of saying you are part of our community, so that's the optimism, and I think it's two things. I think we are naturally good neighbours, you know. That's our default position. We are not naturally hostile to each other, and also what we talked about before, the tradition of solidarity in action. Of a mining community, and put those two things together, and it's stronger than the far right. It's stronger, and that's what we've got to remember, you know. And we can defeat their propaganda, and we don't have to support Le Pen or the Italian woman whose name I've forgotten. Meloni, yes, and we don't have to fall for that trick. But it's very tough when the propaganda is so intense. You know, that's the struggle we're in, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, Yara is a very particular character. And I mean, I know you won't give away the ending to your readers and listeners, but, you know, the scene in the cathedral was very, very important. You know, and the scene in the cathedral was very, very important. And Yara says, you know, well, if I stop hoping, my heart will stop beating. You know, and you do meet people like that who've come through just incredible cruelties and have had great loss in their lives, but still surprise you with their determination to keep on living. You know, so she was a very special character, Yara, and we were fortunate to have a wonderful actress, Ebla, you know, who embodied that. And so I'm glad you got some sense of optimism, you know, from that. Mm-hmm.
We have time for one last question here in the front.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Hi, I'm over here.
Then we'll do one more after.
When I remember the dark days of Thatcherism, at least the arts were flourishing in Britain. It was great cinema, beautiful art, and music. And now I'm missing that as it was back then. I wonder if the art scene has become affected by classism, just the same, that people do political art but don't speak to everybody anymore. What is your impression about the art scene right now in Britain?
I don't know really. I mean, I think in terms of cinema and TV, which was much more open in the 1960s when I began, I think it is more limited. People say it is much harder for kids from the working class to get into cinema and broadcasting. I'm sure that's true. And art will, I mean, art will be subversive, and it won't be the art that is sponsored by the big corporations, you know. So the sponsor, we have an old saying, "He who pays the piper calls the tune," and I hope it's not true with film festivals, because if you're sponsored by a bank, it's not a good sign. And I understand why, but it's a pity, really. It's a pity. We should be able to help. We should be able to share films without banks behind it, because we know what banks do. But this is not a criticism of Locarno; it's a criticism of the system.
And can I just say, it's a very interesting question, really. There was a very interesting article in The Guardian just yesterday, and it's about in the world of publishing. And there's a man who's called Kevin Duffy, who runs a very, very small, very, very successful publishing house. He only does 10 books a year. But he said that he's noticed that stories about the working class are not coming through at all. That was, you know, his impression. He was asked the secret of his success, and he says it's harder and harder now for working class voices to actually get access to publishing. And he was talking about, you know, literary books. And when you talk to, you know, many young Scottish working class actors or writers, I think they're finding it harder and harder to be commissioned. So I think it's a very good question. Yeah.
Okay, so one more over there.
Thank you. When you were in Cannes last May, you kind of were talking about quitting directing movies, if I am correct in understanding. So I wonder, is it true, or are you rethinking about that? Are you still willing to direct movies? And a very small curiosity I have, I saw in the movie last night, perhaps for a very few scenes, the main actress of one of your previous films, which is this one, Sorry We Missed You. So is that true? Was I correct? And how did it happen? The hairdresser, I think.
Yes. Well, she lives in the locality. She's very good. She's very good. Nice woman. We liked working with her, and it was a little part that she could do. As for doing more, I mean, there comes a point when you have to recognise the reality of passing years, you know. And I was saying earlier, if it's a good day if you look in the obituary column and you're not there, you know. So it's a good day, so I can't see doing another film like this again, but maybe something smaller. I don't know, a documentary or something. But it's I mean, I've only kept going because I've worked with Paul, and we just the very first words we spoke at this little gathering. It's really important that that everyone recognises that filming is a collective effort. You know, it's like football. It's a team. You know, and when directors say a film by, this is rubbish. I mean, film can be by Kodak, but no one else. Everything else is a team, really. And so it's that's why it's not a pretense. It is a reality, and so that's why we kind of insist that film is not by one person, as far as we can.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the film and for the discussion, and
Thank
thank
you
you all
very
for
much.
coming.
Thank you.